A very good morning and a warm welcome to the dignitaries on the dais, respected guests, delegates and friends. Today we have with us Srimati Navrat Sindhu Ji, Principal Secretary, Health and Ayush Department, Government of Haryana. Under her leadership, the Healthcare Department has taken many new initiatives in the field of healthcare by the use of ICT. We have with us Shri Devendra Singh Ji, Principal Secretary, Government of Haryana, Chairman, Haryana Power Utilities. Under his leadership and guidance, Haryana has become one of the few surplus power states in the nation. We also have with us Shri Rajesh Agarwal Ji, Principal Secretary, IT, Government of Maharashtra. He is well known for his innovations and out-of-the-box thinking. We have with us Ms. Priyanka Basu, Director, Government of Himachal Pradesh. Himachal has become one of the emerging states in the field of ICT. We also have with us Shri Sandeep Khurana Ji, Vice President, United Health Group. Shri Puneet Ahuja Ji, Senior Consultant, Juniper Networks, one of the leading networking IT companies of the country. I would now like to thank all the dignitaries who were present yesterday and all those who are present today. Yesterday the event was very successful. The Honorable Chief Minister of Haryana was here with us along with the important stakeholders of the state in the e-governance ecosystem. Today, we hope to carry forward the discussions that started yesterday and come up with even better ideas for delivering services to the citizens through the use of ICT. The first session that we have today is on the roadmap of CSCs and basic citizen services, challenges, visions and lessons. We plan to have a holistic view of how the CSCs and other mechanisms for electronic service delivery can help us in developing efficient and transparent system for good governance. I now request Srimati Navrat Sindhu Ji to please come up and address the audience. Okay. Ma'am, I will just take the mic.
Good morning to all of you. It's indeed a pleasure to be here today amongst all the IT professionals and the leaders of this industry and all the members of the panel discussion here. Mr. Devendra Singh, who is our Principal Secretary Power, Mr. Rajesh Agarwal, Principal Secretary IT, Government of Maharashtra, has come all the way here to be with us. And then Ms. Priyanka Basu, who is the Director IT Himachal, and Mr. Sandeep Khurana, Vice President United Health Group, and Shri Puneet Ahuja, Senior Consultant United Networks. It is indeed the topic today of good governance and IT is the topic I think today which concerns all of us here and particularly the government, because as you know we have moved into this century, and this century we are seeing a kind of a revolution which is sometimes silent, sometimes not so silent. What is a revolution? That citizens want to know what is happening, and citizens want things to happen faster. They want things to happen in a more transparent manner. They want things to happen in a more truthful manner, and they want to know where they are when they come to have an interaction with the system, and where do they stand. Even if we have to courier something to any place, we always want, now we have that code and we can track that courier in the parcel. Similarly, when a citizen wants certain thing to be done, he wants to know where is his application. Is it being processed? Is it not being processed? This is one of the things. And any service which a citizen wants, as a citizen we also want, and when we are on the other side, we see it's so difficult to get things done. But it is The question before us when we are sitting on this side of the table and looking after a department, we always question that how do we make things simpler, how do we make things faster, and how do we make things more transparent. The only answer which at least I know and I have discovered is the use of technology and IT. And for this, we have been, this has been our endeavor. It has been our struggle also, let me say, that how to get it done, how to have more better use of IT and technology into the system so that we become more efficient and we really have the governance which we deserve. So in this context, I will not speak much yet because you will have experiences which you have heard yesterday. You will listen to the experiences of the power sector, you will listen to the experience of the Maharashtra government and Himachal government, and all governments are making a lot of effort to improve their use of technology and IT in governance. In health department, I would just say we have also done, we are trying to do something and we have done certain things which I'll share later because I think Mr. Agarwal has to leave, so I would request him to first start the discussion. We'll add on later. Thank you.
Yeah, good morning. One issue with e-governance is टॉपिक ही नहीं समझ में आता है टॉपिक क्या है. वही मैं सुबह से सोच रहा था यार इसका टॉपिक क्या है. कल भी इसी में चर्चा हुई थी काफी. CSCs in 10 years. So let me speak from one is CSC fellows perspective and another is citizen perspective. How they perceive the CSC. Now CSC licenses across the country, they have become like sort of auto rickshaw kind of licenses. मालिक कोई है चलाता कोई है. This is across the country, I believe. हरियाणा में कुछ ऐसा ही होगा. So how do you get a CSC? What's the business model? As a 10th class or 12th class or even a graduate village boy, it's very difficult to appreciate what I am getting into. Now I get a lot of emails, lot of postcard kind of things. मैंने तो 5 साल पहले CSC का लिया था, 2 लाख रुपए खर्च किए थे जमीन बेच के पास की. मुझे बहुत घाटा हुआ है. So now doing a सरकारी job. As Secretary DIT yesterday also showed us some statistics. Average number of transactions is 3 per day. That is average. That means 50% of the CSCs are less than 3 per day. And if an official income, how much is the official income? 6 or 7 rupees. Do you really expect a CSC to really spend on computer, a room, electricity, broadband connection, and earn 15 rupees a day? You can actually do better in Narega work. So a lot of other things come into play. In many cases, it has degenerated into sort of decentralized, basically, you can call it private, you can call it decentralized townships. So that's why we have been encouraging people to really focus on B2C, entrepreneurship kind of stuff. MP Online in Madhya Pradesh, which was joint venture between government and TCS, they went on a totally different model. They said we will become established shopkeepers. कोई stationery shop वाला है, कोई दूसरा है, even a pawn shop. They were given basically MP Online licenses to operate. The fellow is already earning an income, he is already having footfalls. So these are just additional services. In Maharashtra, our CSC is faced and still facing a totally different kind of challenge. We are probably the first ones in the country, 1998, to come up with so a single window concept within collector office campus or Tehsil office campus. Basically, single windows were set up. Basically, the front desk was computerized. So people would come there, and it started way back in 98. Government of India scheme of CSC came in 2006. And it was basically based on a tender. Somebody said I will do it on 11 rupees, somebody said I will take 13 rupees, and so on. Citizen comes to single window, gives his papers, a few services across the counter, for which enabling provisions are made. For example, Satpara or Kachra copy. He could print out and he could basically sign on it, put his stamp and sign on it, and that would be accepted in courts. So this enabling provision was made for across the counter services. And at district or taluka level, basically some naib tahsildar kind of officer is always sitting there. So for many services, even if they have to get the signatures up to naib tahsildar, they are able to get it in 2-3 hours. So villager comes to taluka level, he doesn't mind coming to taluka level if he is getting the certificate on the same day. So by evening he goes back to the certificate. Now with CSC at village level, if the back end is available in Tehsil office, at the end of the day or every alternate day, this fellow goes on motorcycle to Tehsil office, gets all the stamps and comes back. So there is a delay of 3-4 days. So the citizen has a choice. Waste his dihadi, spend money on ST bus ticket, go to Tehsil office, but get his work done on the same day, versus just go to his village CSC, but wait for 3-4 days. So 2 years back when I joined, the ratio was 80-20. 80% transactions are happening at Setus, 20% at CSCs. In the last 2 years, we have really tried to change this mindset, made things faster, decentralized a number of things, so that CSC operator does not have to come to really taluka level to get all the stamps. And this has now resulted in 1/3, 2/3. Now over 1/3 transactions are happening at Setu levels and 2/3 are happening at CSC levels. Now from citizens' perspective, again, let me talk about business model of CSCs. Again, earlier we used to say the problem is Bijli Pani Sadak. Now we say the problems in the country are Bijli Pani Sadak and bandwidth. The same scenario hits the CSCs. Even in states like Maharashtra or Haryana for that purpose, which claim to basically be no load shedding states, we still have large number of villages. Basically electricity is not there during working hours of CSC. Even if the fellow puts a UPS or an inverter, the power even during night is not sufficient to recharge his UPS or inverter to the extent that he can really run it for 8 hours. That is one issue. Second is bandwidth. Bandwidth still remains a problem in at least 80% of our villages. I go to any CSC, I see the fellow has BSNL connection, landline broadband, so to say, and he carries 3 or 4 dongles. एक Vodafone का, एक Airtel का, एक Reliance का, कभी कोई चलता है, कभी कोई चलता है. किस दिन टाटा का चल जाता है, किस दिन वोडा का चल जाता है. So the costs go up, and the reliability is not there. And NOFN, I do not know how many years it will take to really roll out and get operational. So bandwidth at CSC is still a huge problem. So the business model of the CSC operator is quite shaky. Additional things like NPS, insurance, UID, these are basically high profit things for him. High profit, high volumes. So these are sustaining. Now from citizen perspective, one study happened long back. Professor Bhatnagar of IIM Ahmedabad, he conducted a study. The number of visits of the citizen comes down, and he made study including Himachal directly. So he chose 4 states and did this study. The bribes come down by about 50%. In Himachal, his study shows that bribes came down by almost 80%. Number of visits basically dropped from 3 plus to something around 1.5. And obviously the distance traveled then comes down. We did a similar study in Maharashtra with basically Android based app where we clicked out of photographs, did online interviews of guys, and covered almost 500 CSCs in Maharashtra. We saw similar kind of situation. So from citizen perspective, CSCs have been useful. The third and final point I want to make, the whole USP of a CSC operator regarding G2C is, one is assisted filling of the forms. Second, he will go to the seal office or a government office on your behalf and get your work done. As we roll out e-district kind of projects, where the fellow does not have to, where even the VLE does not have to go to government office. He scans the papers and uploads them. This is good, but ultimately this can kill the CSC model also. If the e-district is really successful and the papers can be uploaded and the digitally signed certificates issued at the back end. So as we are computerizing backends now, as we are enabling scanned documents to be sent across, digitally signed documents to be received, the CSC has to undergo a transformation. Otherwise, more and more citizens, even in rural areas, they will say, why do we walk to a CSC? We'll just open the government website, do the transaction ourselves. So I hope there is some discussion on this aspect. I will stop here. Thank you.
Presentation note. Vivek, Rajesh had reported a presentation. Srinivas Sandhu, Additional Chief Secretary, Health, Dr. Priyana, all the distinguished dignitaries in the dais, and the illustrious and distinguished guests in this seminar today. Rajesh talked about CSC in particular. I'll start with speaking about power sector since I'm looking after that sector. And how ICT can be immensely useful in terms of driving the power sector. In power sector, I'll start by saying that essentially two things are important. One is the political will to be able to turn around the sector. So there are huge problems in power sector. Many of you may be aware of that. And the second is the operational efficiency of the sector. Now, one is uncontrollable variable, which probably at this stage, as officer administrators, probably I would not like to touch upon that. The second most important thing is that how can we improve the operational efficiency using the ICT? And that is where ICT has tremendous role. We have tried it in some respect and we are still continuing to try it. And we are very hopeful that the turnaround which is expected to happen in power sector, especially in distribution utilities, it can be immensely useful. I'll at the end touch briefly about the role of CSC also in the distribution utilities, which I think has huge potential. I was constantly in touch with Mr. Veer Singh Malik, ACSIT, and we did a pilot in Barwala where the power sector or the distribution utility also participated and we had very encouraging results. And if the actual rollout happens in a sustainable manner of CSC, I think this can create tremendous amount of leverage and benefit to the distribution utilities as well. So I start by saying about the vision mission of our department. I'll try to correlate it with the, I will not pontificate too much on the power sector per se, but how ICT can be used in the power sector. The vision, of course, is how do we make available adequate quality and reliable power in a sustainable fashion in power sector in the state, contributing to the accelerated development of the state. Today, we all know that power sector is considered to be the backbone of the economy. In fact, the capital output ratio, the elasticity ratio, if you see between the GDP growth and the growth in the power sector, is almost close to unity. And therefore, it is almost synonymous that if we want to grow in accelerated fashion in the GDP, in the economy, then power sector has to grow in a commensurate fashion. And to be able to achieve that, we have to be able to supply reliable quality power to all categories of consumers. That includes domestic, agriculture, industry, commercial, and so on and so forth. Now I will not go into details. Point is that we are trying to achieve this by creating additional power supply sources, either in-house or outside. We are trying to project the long-term power demand and how do we meet that demand through additional supplies, and also create relevant evacuation infrastructure to be able to take that power to all categories of consumers. Now, even while we are doing it, the most important, I'll come to the last, which is very, very critical and in which ICT has a tremendous role to play, that is to eliminate the gap between average cost of supply and average revenue realized. Today, on an average, in Haryana, for example, we are buying power at 4 rupees per unit approximately. And the losses are about 30%, technical commercial losses, which makes the power cost about 6 rupees. We have some operational maintenance expenses at, say, about 50 to 75 paisa. So the power costs about 6 rupees, 50 to 6 rupees, 75 paisa. And then we are distributing that power. The average revenue realized from consumer on an average basis throughout Haryana, the deficit will be close to or more than 1.5 rupees per unit. So which means every unit which we sell, we are losing money. Now the challenge is how do we bridge this gap? How do we effectively turn around the sector? That is where the role of ICT becomes very, very critical. Now the areas where ICT we have found can be extremely useful is customer services, metering, billing collection, energy audit, vigilance, and of course the business processes. Yesterday Secretary IT was talking about very important thing, that how do we approach ICT in finding solutions to our problems. One is the reform-oriented approach, the proactive approach, in which we are trying to, traditionally in 80s when the ICT started, we had been hearing about this as the first step was that we converted manual operation into digital or computerized operations. We put some computers. Even today, I would not name the state, this particular state in electricity sector when I was handling power in a joint secretary Ministry of Power. The data which is collected from the villages, it is loaded on the Excel sheet and then as such it is displayed in the head office. And where the people who are doing it, they consider it drudgery because it is double the effort. You first collect the data on manual and then you try to enter or key it in the computer and then again try to display it without making any valuable or useful taking advantage of the data. And if that happens, then obviously ICT is a non-starter. So the most important thing is that even while we install hardware, even while we are trying to use the data, how do we use the data? How do we change the user environment? And it was also talked about business process reengineering. Business process reengineering might sound to be a very difficult term, but as I understood in very, very simple terms, business process reengineering and ICT would mean ICT redefines the work process and workflows. How? We call it business process reengineering. Who does what? Prior to ICT, who does what? And who does what after ICT? So that is business process reengineering. Invariably, when we use ICT, then these processes, who does what, this changes. There is a radical change. And that is what the organization has to be geared to be able to effectively use ICT. So in all these services, which I very briefly touch upon, this business process reengineering is almost an integral component of using ICT in the sector. First is the online services. When I talk of IT and ICT, for example, centralized call center. Now today we have a centralized call center which we have now made applicable to both the utilities in the Uttar Dakshin Haryana. So a consumer typically has to call the call center, registers his complaint and then expects solution to his problem, because the customer call center then in turn is connected to what is known as FRT or fault repair teams. And through the fault repair teams, they constantly touch base with them and find out whether the problem has been resolved, and after that a response is sought and that is conveyed to the consumer. Now in this entire process, the most important thing is that how do you organize your database. Typically, for example, in our utilities, the unique code on the basis of which the call center operates is the 11-digit unique account number of the consumer. Now typically when the, let's say, light goes out in the evening and the consumer calls a call center, the call center operator will ask him, what is your consumer ID? What is your consumer number? He will not remember his consumer, which is the alphanumeric 11-digit code. So we decided that we have to collect data, and today almost, as yesterday the Chief Minister also talked about, 90% of the people use mobile telephone, even in rural urban areas. So why can't we have, let's say, a mobile number or a landline number? One of either of the two, I think, has to be there in almost every home, practically 90% in rural urban areas. So we have tried to organize the database. Why I'm trying to highlight this is that the collection of database or the existence of an authentic database is most critical to use of ICT and delivering value services or delivering value to your activities which you are doing. So for example, now we have collected that. Hopefully within a month we'll be able to see, so that whenever a customer calls, he doesn't have to remember he doesn't have to in the dark of the night when the light goes out, he doesn't have to take out his bill, try to identify his user ID. He can simply mention about his landline number or the mobile number, and then straight away database will be able to pull out the details and able to reach the FRT, field repair teams, fault repair team, and then to be able to find a solution to the problem. Now, similarly, for example, even while we are doing call center, another interesting thing we found out that whenever there is a blackout which happens, let's say a feeder is down, then typically hundreds of calls come to the call center is flooded. We did an audit of the call center. Now the call center begins to handle all these hundreds and thousands of calls. They are just not able to handle the load. The waiting time increases, the services suffer, and therefore we try to map the feeders in each of the areas with typical colonies or areas which they serve, and try to link the consumer through his mobile number, landline number to the feeder and then to the areas. So whenever, for example, our operating center tells the call center that such and such feeder is down for 2 hours. So all the colonies which are served by those feeders, they are shown in red color on the screen of the call center operator. Whenever that caller calls that number, immediately it tells him that your light will be available in 2 hours. Because the feeder is down, people are attending it. So the entire productivity of the call center improved. We did a pilot in Gurgaon, and we are going to do it in all the circles. So what I am trying to emphasize is that even while we are trying to use the ICT services, most important issue is that how do you organize your database on the basis of which you will leverage your ICT to be able to deliver better services to the consumers. Now similarly, we have created SMS gateway and email now. Earlier, we had a grievance addressal system in which was internet based, but now we have created SMS gateway because, especially in rural areas, the users or consumers may not be able to use the internet based services, and therefore they can always mention their grievances by SMS, on which a response will be, or a confirmation number will be given to the consumer, and once the grievance of the consumer has been redressed, thereafter, SMS goes to the consumer saying that as per the fault repair team, your grievance has been redressed. Now it is for the consumer to call back or SMS back whether it is true, because there is a possibility that, because we will be monitoring as part of the performance management system whether the FRT has been able to effectively address how many grievances in how much time. Now suppose there is a fake reply on the part of the FRT, that can easily be verified through the SMS reply of the consumer, and you can always check back and find out whether the grievance has actually been addressed or not. So that is another value addition which we are trying to do through the SMS gateway. Similarly, emails and so on. Another interesting area which I would like to highlight is the online loading of the FIR. Now, whenever consumer theft occurs, then typically what used to happen is a case is made out against the consumer. There is always, and in many occasions we found out there were complaints of irregularities where the officer, whether it is JE, SPO, he will then try to negotiate with the consumer that how much you want to pay, otherwise I am going to make a theft case, and therefore such and such amount will be levied on you, and in addition there will be a criminal case lodged against you, because now we have special police stations where all these electricity theft cases are registered. And there is a very interesting provision in the Electricity Act which says that within 24 hours of detecting a theft, if a complaint is not made to the electricity police station, it is supposed to be mandatory. So maybe after 2 or 3 years of the case, when it goes to the trial, we found out that the court acquits the consumer or the person who was stealing the electricity by saying that this mandatory provision of reporting the complaint within 24 hours was not adhered to. And therefore we introduced this concept of online FIR, where the SP or JE, the moment he detects the theft, There is no question of delaying it. On the same day, we have created a format, online format. Every subdivision is connected through internet, and therefore they just enter the bare minimum essentials, and straight away the complaint is lodged to the police station. And in the police station also, the case diary has been computerized. So the second round of negotiation which used to take place at the police stations also, that is also eliminated, because the moment the data is entered through the internet from the subdivision to the police station, it enters the case diary. Now the only option with the police station is, or the SHO, that within 48 hours either the person deposits the amount or it has to be converted into an FIR. So the mandatory provision of law is addressed, that within 24 hours a complaint is registered with the police station, and we realized that the recovery in case of theft cases, which was barely 25%, because people never thought that anything serious is going to happen because of the various irregularities which I mentioned. Now the recovery rate has jumped. It has gone to more than 50%. We expect that it will touch close to 80 to 90% in case this process is fully streamlined. Because in that case, the consumer who is indulging in laxity would very well know that if he does not deposit the amount, then in that case there are every chances of this getting converted into an FIR within 48 hours. And that has tremendously improved the environment. And this is not only in terms of recovering the theft amount, but also in creating a message down the line. It creates a deterrent, because people who are indulging in theft, without any chances of being detected or being penalized, now there is a message which will go down. Now this process has started, it has already started showing results, and we expect to upscale it. Similarly, we have started recently online application for new industrial connections. Any connection, industrial connection, even if it is more than 5 kilowatt. We recently done a software, internet-based, where although it is very initial stages, but it has already been launched. And it was done with the help of Heartron, a team which was assembled by Heartron. Fortunately, they have done this job very well, and we have already started receiving applications, because we received complaints in many of the industrial areas that typically the industrial consumer, when he approaches for getting a new industrial connection, there were a lot of cases and complaints of corruption. That even before accepting the application, 25,000 rupees are charged, or 1,000 rupees per kilowatt in charge, and so on and so forth. Now, to be able to address this issue, we started this, and we expect, and we have made obviously provision for uploading all the documents which have been duly listed on the website, which need to be uploaded for making the application complete in all respects. If that happens, after that an acknowledgement will come, and then the consumer will be able to even trace the movement of the connection from, let's say, STO to XCN and to GVN and so on, whichever is the competent authority. Now this is a new beginning which we have done. We have already started receiving applications, I mentioned only 29 so far. But we expect that this will completely transform the process of filing for new connections and eliminating in a big way the irregularity or corruption which was associated with this process. Similarly, the online bill payment facility. Recently, we also started along with the online bill payment facility that a consumer will be able to see or witness his bill on the internet by quoting his account number and see what is the actual bill. So even before the bill is physically distributed, he will be able to see it. The next step, probably which will be at a later stage, which Mr. Malik has been emphasizing, is that, and which probably we hope we'll be able to do, is that where a consumer can be able to generate his own bill by filling in his own readings. We'll do it on a pilot basis, probably in Gurgaon, and where we trust the consumer that instead of the meter reader, there are often complaints about meter reader filling in excess meter reading and all sorts of problems of inflated bills and so on and so forth. Now that can be eliminated if we start it in a pilot plan. Of course, it needs to be validated, because there can be unscrupulous consumers also who might be filling in less readings, and therefore there has to be a back and forth authentication or validation of this process before we actually upscale it. Now similarly, computerized cash collections. This, of course, we have created. We experienced that number of cases. Typically what happens, that our ex-serviceman league, which has been outsourced the work of bill collection and also meter reading, they go in a vehicle, They go along with armed guards, they collect the money, then they give they give to the sub-division office the stubs or the vouchers along with the money, and after that within a 15-day cycle it goes to our Heartron or Department of Electronics centers at the district headquarters. There they get entered, then a complete manifest is prepared and so on and so forth. This entire process or cycle, which can run from 15 to 20 days or even more. There have been many cases of fraud in terms of online reconciliation, checks deposited, checks dishonored, bounced, proper credit entries not made and so on and so forth. Now with computerized cash collection, we will be in a position where the money which is collected is directly entered into a database. And therefore, it can be directly validated. A computerized print is printed from a central database so that the chances of fraud is almost minimized or eliminated. Now, another interesting thing in this metering, which has been listed here, is that in Maharashtra, for example, Rajesh would know, is there. I discussed with Maharashtra. 50,000 consumers out of maybe more than 1 crore consumers constitute 50% of the total energy consumed in the state. And those 50,000 consumers are on automatic meter reading instruments, AMRs, wherefrom the data through a modem is directly collected onto a central server. And we know exactly on a 15-minute interval or a 30-minute interval that how much electricity is being consumed by those heavy-duty consumers. And once that data comes, and it is clearly mandated there that after a month, a 15 days notice is supposed to be given to the consumer to deposit the bill. And precisely it's a monthly billing cycle. So let's say end of the month, the bill is generated, and within 15 days, if the bill is not paid, which also is visible on the central server for those 50,000 consumers. And if the meter reading shows that the consumption is still taking place, then the superintendent engineer of the concerned district is automatically suspended. It's an official order. And because of this, by making effective use of ICT and actively monitoring through a central server, practically the default in these 50,000 consumer has come to nil or eliminated. And we have already started this process in Haryana also, where we started with all the consumers more than 10 kilowatt. Already we have floated the tender. We expect to award that project, which will be completed within a year and a half, where all the consumers more than 10 kilowatt, and we have about in our case in Haryana, 3% of our consumer constitute 65% of the energy consumed in the state. So at least in that segment, if you use this AMR facility and making use of ICT, then we expect that not only the revenue leakage will be plugged, but we'll be able to have much better realization in terms of revenue and much accurate reading of the metering. Now, next, which we are doing is, and which is now coming to the proactive part. I'll just spend a few minutes on that even while we are trying to address consumer grievances, even while we are trying to address the leakages in the revenue through online FIR and through the automatic meter reading instruments using the modems and communication technology, most important is, can we utilize this data to be able to proactively plug some of the problems which might arise later on, and then we try to find solutions through ICT. For example, recently, Chief Minister told us that there are a lot of problems of inflated billing, and you must address it effectively. We just thought that how exactly we can address it, and we found out that our computerized billing facilities, we can easily generate exception reports, and those exception reports, hard copies, were generated by Heartron DOC at the circle level, and they used to travel to sub-division where they were gathering dust, and sometimes they were not even being attended to. Now we have said, again with the help of Heartron, we have written a software where we immediately transport that data through our server at the subdivision level through the internet, and now at the subdivision level, by applying various filters and using a software, we can easily find out that compared to the normal average of the bills received, let's say for the last 6 months, which are the bills where there are unusually high bills are being generated. And we can do a pre-audit even before we dispatch those bills to consumers. And we can always apply a filter whether it is 50% more, 100% more, and so on and so forth. And this, for example, we did in Faridabad and Gurgaon, and substantially the problems of inflating bills have come down. Now this we of course hope to upscale and repeat in almost, it's not difficult at all. So this can be a direct benefit in terms of trying to proactively address some of the issues through the use of ICT and not merely trying to find solution to the problems once they have occurred. So this is another very important use of ICT in our entire business process. Now of course ERP, you are all aware, whether it is inventory management, material management, etc. ERP, both in generation company and distribution companies, we are trying to introduce. Now there is an RAPDRP program which I will very briefly touch upon that. It's a Government of India program, which is a 50,000 crore program. We are doing it in Haryana also. Expect to complete by May 2014. Another very, very potent use of ICT for doing energy audit and energy accounting. Typically in power sector, the most important issue is when the energy is pumped into the system, which energy, how much energy goes where, and where the losses are taking place. If you can exactly track it down right up to transformer level, starting from feeder level, then we can exactly find out where the leakage is taking place and how we can plug it. And this is one program where, for example, we will be using the optical fiber cable connectivity right to subdivision level and the GPRS systems by which we will be directly getting readings from the transformers about the consumption of electricity and then correlate it with the help of the bills generated on a particular feeder or a transformer and then find out where exactly the leakage is taking place. So this is one program I just want to mention which will have tremendous implications if properly implemented, and we are on a fast track trying to ensure that the timelines of May 2014 are met and we are able to implement this program, where the energy audit and accounting is the single biggest program in the power sector by making use of ICT to achieve energy audit and energy accounting at every stage, right from the subdivision level to the feeder level to the BT level. Now this is what happens in APDRP typically, where, for example, from the consumer, we can do a spot billing, or through a meter reading instrument, we can directly have the data coming to our central data server. That is called meter data acquisition system. In the meter data acquisition system, through the distribution transformer and substations, we know exactly how much energy is being consumed at the DT level, at the substation level, at the feeder level, and the data which is received from the consumers, which also travels to the data center. We can then correlate the two and try to find out where exactly the problem is. And we can track down our aggregate technical and commercial losses. And of course, there are other benefits in terms of geographical information system, network analysis. Once we have mapped our assets through geographical coordinates, we exactly know if a new connection is to be released or a network augmentation is to take place. Then sitting in office, you will know how your network looks like and where exactly you can try to augment or try to release new connections, etc. So this is one program just I wanted to mention which tremendously will use ICT for improving the operational efficiency in the power sector. There is a smart grid pilot in Panipat which is being done with the help of Japanese companies. Here again we are trying to find out that how the time of the use metering can take place to reduce the gap between peak and off-peak. Typically we have very high consumption in the evening morning hours. During the day consumption is very low, and we are always saddled with this problem that how do we handle this surplus power during the day. But if we can have time of the use metering, which now happens partly in the industrial sector, but we will try to do it in the consumer sector, where the consumers can basically regulate their consumption, and that will help in flattening the load curve and in reducing the cost of power purchase and improving the efficiency. Now this is the experiment which we did in Barwala through the CSC, where the reduction in the average billing cases in Barwala, it happened from 564 cases, it went down to 332 cases. Typically, if the meter readers don't visit the actual premises and report that meter premises is locked or the user is not available and so on and so forth, then we have to resort to average billing, which leads to reduction in revenue. Since there is a CSC operator sitting in the village who also undertook the responsibility of meter reading and billing, so this helped us in terms of reducing the average billing cases, and in terms of the collection efficiency, as you can see, from 59% we went up to 101%. This is one case. We are very actively and keenly looking at this option of CSC to improve our billing operation, improvement in our collection efficiency, and also in terms of grievance redressal, which at the moment is missing, but we hope that will also be addressed through the CSC. And the most important issue there, of course, will be, and which we are looking at, which Rajesh mentioned, that if we can have very credible connectivity at the village level, which is being planned as part of the optical fiber being spreading up to last panchayat, then of course it can have very tremendous and humongous benefit for the power sector. Now similarly, HPCCL, HEPNL, we are trying to do all these operations in terms of ERP and other accounting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Govinda. I wanted to interrupt you at one of when I said you were making an excellent presentation, so I should not distract you. No, it's okay. I think but it is an excellent presentation because it does the whole gamut of the power sector, which in any case is a very powerful sector and very complicated and challenging. And you did touch upon while the challenges before you very well, that is production, distribution, cost reduction, efficiencies from your system point of view. And the second part, the first part that you touched on, citizens' point of view, which we were talking about, that how this citizen is touched when his light goes off and how he can, this is the most frustrating experience that you're trying to dial up the number and trying to find out when the light is going to come and nobody responds, and that is a challenge because the first touch point, of the citizen and the billing, all the inefficiencies of billing system, and then of course from system point of view, theft reduction and the theft reduction in the power sector. So when you look at the entire thing, it's so complicated and it touches upon both the citizen and the people who are involved in delivering efficient power structure, and how the ICT has helped you to improve this interface. That is the very excellent presentation you made. Of course, you raised certain issues, and issues of whether it's a connectivity or whether it's issue of data collection, because data, I will touch upon it later, but data collection, as I find, is one of the most difficult proposition, and especially updating your data and the data flow processes. Earlier, Rajesh had, of course, touched upon the CSC, which you ended up, and I think what Rajesh was saying is very simple words, that whether the user is ready, the consumer, the citizen is ready to use the CSC, that is the first challenge, and whether the system is ready to deliver that, if at all. So we probably are struggling with this system, because system and CSC is involved as a lot of backend. The systemic changes and the business process rebuilding, which you touched upon, and in Haryana, I think you've been sitting and he's been working on it for a long time, and we have made our own experiments. I think we are now we are going to do it in a very efficient, hopefully in a very efficient, because it involves so many departments. That is the whole challenge. But Rajesh touched upon that, and now I request Ms. Basu to please come off the stage and share your experience in Himachal.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Here I would like to present before you how in Himachal Pradesh we have gone about making the common CSCs success and reaching government to citizen services and business to citizen services at almost the doorsteps of the rural population of Himachal. Himachal Pradesh is a very small state. We've got 3,243 panchayats spread over 77 blocks across 12 districts. So our challenge was to have these CSCs at the panchayat level. As per Government of India, the scheme was to establish 1 lakh CSCs in rural areas in the 6 lakhs villages. That translates to roughly 1 CSC for every 6 village, to provide government citizen service and business citizen service at their doorsteps. using information and communication tools. Now in our state, our target was to set up 3,366 such centers spread over those 3,243 panchayats under the brand name of Lok Mitra Kendras. This was spread across the 3 zones of Shimla, Mandi and Kangra. Now, what is a CSC? These were envisaged as the front-end delivery points for government, private and social sector services for the rural citizens of India, and these are operator-assisted centers and using a combination of IT as well as non-IT services. Here, I would like to deliberate a little on those non-IT services because in order to make these CSCs viable, which Rajesh sir touched upon, that the viability may be a question. So we allowed not only IT services to be delivered by these Lok Mitra Kendras, but also FMCG products, mobile SIMs and certain other essential items which the LMKs might keep with them so that it makes business sense. And it was for us a last mile service delivery point because in Himachal we had completed the statewide area network, the HIMSWAN, which was running now into our 6th year. And we've also done our state data center, which has the central depository services. It's a depository of all services. So the database is ready. So the challenge was to reach these citizen services almost to the doorstep of the rural population in the remotest corners of the state. Now, the implementation model which we undertook was a public-private partnership because we wanted to encourage the village-level entrepreneurs and associate the private companies who would take over the day-to-day issues and handle them, and also help in the setting up of these processes. And therefore, there was pooling of funds at the private level as well as obviously the government level. We integrated scale with efficiency because previously what was happening, each department was delivering its service to the citizens in its own different way, using portals or manually also. But now we have integrated all these services under a single portal, and so the citizens, the villager, knows at the village level that he only merely has to go to these Lok Mitra Kendras to avail of these bouquet of services. Now, we had also evolved the CSC model after a thorough study of the best practices across various states of India. And then we tailor-made it to our needs. The stakeholders were also incentivized to come together. Here the stakeholders are fourfold: government of course, the private companies who were given revenue support, and the village level entrepreneurs or the LMKs who are working on a commission basis, as well as the citizens who are paying a nominal cost for these services to be delivered at their homes doorstep. So this is what I was talking to you about the 3-tier structure, the VLE, which is analogous to a franchisee, and the SCA who we engaged to manage and build and train the VLE businesses, and of course the state for implementation and to provide the policy, content and financial support. Now the CSCs, the MSAs were signed by the government with 2 companies, Zoom and GNG Group in 2008. And this was, we provided revenue support to these companies as was mandated by the Government of India. And this was done on a 50-50 basis, grant in aid from Government of India and the 50% state share as ACL. Now, in one of them, the GNG Group, they bid negative, there was a negative bid, and they gave us 10 rupees per CSC for Shimla and 14 for Mandi. However, in terms of operations and rollout, there was no difference between both the companies. So firstly, I would like to elaborate on what the CSC's responsibilities were. They had to basically identify the village level entrepreneur and make him understand what the model was, what the business model is, and then obviously the provisioning of the services and coordination with other stakeholders and bringing to our notice what were the difficulties or what would make this a success. And then of course he would provide the VLEs once all the things were in place. He would provide the VLEs access to the services for making the transactions and also for monitoring purposes for generating daily as well as weekly and monthly MIS reports. Now this is what is typically the Lok Nitya Kendra setup process. The first SCA would identify the village level entrepreneur, then the infrastructure would be set up, and then the certification request would be sent to the district administration, who would then get about the business of certifying and authenticating the VLE. And then only after this process is done, the VLE would be allowed for delivery of services. So what exactly is there in the CSC? Here, this is our CSC supported by the SCA, and he is just providing us with the 150 square feet of space, computer, printer, camera and internet, and of course the operator is there, and to provide the services, government to citizen service and business to citizen services, and supported by the SCA, which is Zoom and GMG in our case. Now this is the business model that we have for our CSC, the CSC, the Lok Nitya Kendras that we have in Himachal. The CSC, as you can see, the NMK operator or the CSC, he first deposits the amount in the SCA bank accounts. Only after that is reflected in the SCA portal that his working capital is updated, and then only he has the access, login access to this portal, and then he is allowed the service delivery. And then he makes the transactions, and he after this is then deducted from his working capital, and then his commission is reflected again in the SCA portal, and the government department, the amount is then transferred to the government departments, and access to the government departments in the G2C portal and their the number of transactions and the value of transactions is being maintained also by the G2C portal by the Department of DIT, while the SCA portal has access to government departments as well as the business to citizen services. Now, a quick look at how we rolled out these CSCs and what was our achievements. The scheme was started in August 2009 and with only 294, and till date in January 2014 we have 3007 CSCs which are rolled out, but our target still remains 3366, that is one CSC per panchayat. There were a lot of challenges because there were delays in the rollout, there were lack of G2C services, the lack of trainings, the day-to-day issues with the VLEs and lack of awareness. Here I would especially like to just point out, as previous speakers have spoken, we face the issues of connectivity. We also faced, unlike other states, the financial viability, because Himachal has very less population, and not only that, it was dispersed population, especially in districts like Kinnaur and Lahul Spiti, where population is less than 200, and in Lahul Spiti, density of population is less than even 1 per square kilometer. However, we have addressed these during the course of the rollout of the CSCs. I will come to each of them, how we tackled and how we got around these problems. One more thing I would like to stress about the lack of awareness. It wasn't only the lack of awareness for the citizens for whom the services were meant, or the village level entrepreneurs to understand what he is getting into, but also field level officers of government departments. So we had to make every tier and every stakeholder aware of what their specific roles are. Now, the delay in the rollout would obviously attract penalties, and these amounted to about some 20 crores for the SCAs. We went to the Apex committee twice and we got the recommendations for their waiver, and thereafter cabinet approval, and also the cabinet approved for extension of the timelines. And this was greatly appreciated by the Government of India, and it was recommended to be replicated in the other states. Now, as far as the Government to Citizen Services are concerned, the Department of IT was very instrumental in the identification of the services, and then SOPs were prepared by my department. The service charges were finalized and agreements, tripartite agreements were prepared. Law department was also, the approval was taken from the law department. Cabinet approval was taken for these charges, notification was issued, then only the software was prepared, and then only the services were rolled out. For this, obviously it wasn't a very easy affair. We had to make this a priority for the government, which it was, and it was given priority from the highest quarters. We made it an agenda item in the monthly COS meetings chaired by the Chief Secretary. And each department was asked, was monitored that what are their government to citizen services that they could make available. Service charges also were negotiated and deliberated upon. For instance, previously for the electricity billing, we had service charges for 1% or rupees 2.50, whichever was less. But then that wasn't really working out and it wasn't making things viable. And therefore now it was increased, it is 2% or 5 rupees per bill, which goes to which the customer has to pay, which goes as commission to our VLEs or the LMKs. And this we took cabinet approval for these service for these rates. Also, revenue support given to the SCAs were also linked to the volume of transactions. Himachal being a smaller state, a minimum of merely 50 transactions per quarter transactions had to be done by the SCAs in order to get their revenue support. That was making it viable. The trainings, as I said before, the Department of IT as well as the SCAs organized district level trainings and workshops for the VLEs. All our 77 blocks were covered, and senior officers of the DIT as well as the SCAs and district administration imparted these trainings to the VLEs. And we even had VCs with all the blocks for the VLE awareness, and this was done twice during the course of the rollout. And in order to give an incentive to the VLE or prospective VLE to come to the district headquarters or block headquarters or panchayat headquarters for these trainings, even TADA were given after due approval. To mesh out our day-to-day issues, the personal mobile numbers of senior officers in our department was given, so that if at any level the issues were not being sorted out, my officers were there to sort it out anytime. So we had also a toll-free number which was provided to the VLEs, and the help desk was being manned by our SCAs, GNG and Zoom. Not only that, to have a check and balance, the Department of IT has its own people there even today. IT facilitators were also deployed through an external agency, that is DOIC, in all the districts to help the district administration and the VLE as well as to do the coordination at the district and panchayat levels. Now the awareness, as far as awareness is concerned, we made it an agenda point, as I said before, in all the Committee of Secretary meetings, and it was an agenda item in all VCs with the Deputy Commissioners, and this was done on a monthly basis with the Chief Secretary herself was conducting these VCs with the Deputy Commissioners. It became also an agenda item in all the Gram Sabhas, therefore the awareness issue about the rural population being not aware was taken care of in this manner. And of course, there were publicity was done through press notes, newspaper advertisements, and local cable TV and media. So this is just our rollout status. In fact, ma'am, I'm almost through. This is just statistics. So as I said, our target is 3,366, out of which now 3,007 VLEs have been identified, and we have 2,393 delivering G2C services as of today. And these are some of our the citizen services which the NMKs are delivering: electricity bills payment, irrigation, water bills, BSNL, Jamabandi, Shatra Nasab, and all whatever you can think of is there as of today. These are even, we have obtained Himachal Public Service Commission and Excise and Taxation. These 15 services are also being done through the state portal as well as the SSDG gateway, which is over and above the SCA portal and the DIT portal. These are those 15 services, and these are the services which are in the pipeline. We are in the process, and 51 services have been identified which we would be shortly delivering through the e-district project, and 11 services through the SSDG gateways. And this was our this thing. As you can see how it has started from 0 till this is the growth in our NMKs all over the state. So in January 14 we have 2,393 NMKs in almost all the districts, and these are active VLEs. This is this is again the growth of our VLEs. Just to give you an idea how much of transactions, the value of transactions for electricity bill payments as of January 14, 12 crores, more than 12 crores was collected in this month itself. Jamabandis, 10 lakh Jamabandis for irrigation and public health water bills. This is about 6 crores. Bus tickets 75 lakhs, BSNL payments 6 crores, more than 6 crores, and these are our B2C services also which are being delivered by our VLEs or NMKs. And the future roadmap, as I said, the 51 services through the SSDG as well as the e-district projects all would be dovetailed through the NMKs, and that would be our service delivery point. And we would also be linking it up with the Panchayati Raj institutions, and focus would be on capacity building, and we are exploring other areas so that the viability and the sustainability of the VLE is taken care of. And these, we have thought of banking, insurance, education, health and agriculture. In this case, I would also like to say in banking, PNB has tied up with about 77 of our VLEs, and they are doing banking transactions as of today. We have also roped in SBI, but we are in the process of making them reach out to our remotest areas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Priyanka. It was a very comprehensive presentation, and I think Himachal it's a good model that you have developed, and it seems that it is very successful. Only one question I wanted to ask you, that as Rajesh had said, that some of the transactions are very few, like in some of the cases there are 2 or 3 transactions only. But you probably said that you have ensured that there will be minimum 50 transactions per CSC. And so what is the highest number of transactions being done by a CSC, and what is the lowest? In terms of value terms, ma'am, our average is about 1,000 per month. Otherwise, it doesn't make business sense. So that is our average, and it doesn't come below that. That is our minimum, and our maximum is that we've got VLEs who are even reporting 5 lakh rupees transactions, and 50,000 seems to be the average. That is what the study has shown. That's great. Okay, now I think because we are falling short of time, I'll just go to Mr. Sandeep Khurana to make it.
Hello, ma'am. Ms. Sandhu, eminent panelists, friends, good morning. I'm going to be talking about something different today, slightly different from what we heard earlier eminent panelists talk about, but would eventually tie it back in with how the private sector can partner with the government to help alleviate some of the challenges in delivery of effective healthcare to the citizens. I'd like to start with a brief introduction of our organization. United Health Group is one of the largest healthcare companies with a revenue of $122 billion globally. We work with 250 central and state government agencies, 2.5 lakh healthcare professionals, 6,000 hospitals, and 8 crore individuals globally. Our mission is to help people live healthier lives and make the healthcare system work better for everyone. Some of our key offerings are divided into 2 categories: health benefits and health services. Health benefits is where we provide insurance coverage to our members across multiple countries. About 3.5 crore people are under our coverage and plans. Health services is what is very important for us in this market, where we provide information technology enabled health services and platforms encompassing information technology products, turnkey implementation projects, mobile applications, healthcare data and analytics, and population health management solutions that we deliver in a public-private partnership model with the government across the world. We've been operating in India since 2006, employ about 10,000 people servicing our global customers in the areas that I just mentioned, operating out of 4 cities. Our domain expertise and commitment has been recognized globally. We ranked at 17th number on Fortune 500 list. We are, and very recently honored to have been invited to fix healthcare.org website. So what I want to talk about is how data could be an effective foundation for a very strong healthcare system. So any healthcare system has 4 key players: the government, the care providers, the payers, and most importantly, the patients. All of them have one mission, that is keeping the patients healthy. And data, we believe, can help everyone do it better. Government wants to improve citizens' health and corresponding indicators, contributes a significant amount of funding, participates in care delivery as well as funding, and runs large-scale programs to improve health indicators at large numbers. Care providers want to ensure the best care for their patients within reasonable costs, but are hampered by lack of effective data and knowledge of clinical pathways, patient histories. Payers are able to make their decisions based on data, but could get better data. Payers are also very well suited to help all the players with providing this data, but they are stunts today at least. So let's look at how data-driven intelligence can help each of them do it better. I'll share 3 use cases for each of these 3 participants. The first one for payers, how efficient implementation of cashless and reimbursement schemes is possible in a country like India by real-time fraud prevention methodologies. Healthcare fraud is an issue all across the world, in every country, be it a very developed, mature market or an emerging market, but it's particularly severe in India, especially in government-run schemes. Every day or every other month, we get a news article about a scam in RSPY, about fake cards being issued, about excessive billing that happens. There are estimates and surveys that say that about 50 to 25% of total spend is lost in healthcare fraud. That's a very high number. But as I said, the problem in India, approximately 20% of spend is wasted through fraud and abuse. In mature markets, it's more like 7%. In lots of studies, slightly different numbers, but this is where it averages out. This difference is attributed to more advanced fraud prevention infrastructure using big data analytics techniques, robust systems and processes that are implemented to support collection of data and allow implementation of analytic systems, And finally, the stronger regulatory framework, which is where the government has a major role to play. Our framework to control healthcare fraud essentially helps companies and governments move through a 5-stage process where they start with very, very basic prepayment screening, pre-authorizations that pretty much everyone does. Begin doing reactive analysis of tips investigation if there is information that comes to someone acting on that information. Retrospective analytics, where you look at statistical relevant numbers. For example, why do I get all cesarean cases from a particular hospital, whereas clinically and statistically it's not possible that most of the deliveries in any given area are cesarean in nature. You apply this on past data, identify cases, and then you create prospective triggers to stop such incidences in a prepaid fashion, followed by making a neural network that makes your system smart enough to do predictive analytics and stop this fraud even before the claim has triggered. The use case 2 that I will talk about is for care providers, for hospitals, which is how do we track more effective clinical pathways? How do we make it real for patients? And I'll take a hypothetical example of a 60-year-old woman with hypertension who is diagnosed with sepsis of the left leg and was additionally diagnosed with diabetes. Now this is a very, very acute illness case where the patient may lose a limb or may even end up losing her life. A typical care pathway that doctors, she obviously goes to a tertiary care center, obviously to the most senior doctor there, and the doctor, based on his experience, decides a particular clinical pathway. He still hasn't seen patients' live medical history. He hasn't seen a statistically relevant model of what patients like her have gone through in the past and what was the most effective depending on her disease condition, her comorbidities, and her lifestyle and demographic data. The tool that we have developed that runs very effectively in the US, that we have developed in partnership with Mayo Clinic, helps a clinician do this analysis in real time, between sips of coffee, literally, where 20 years of longitudinal data is turned to identify identical twins to a case like this, identical in terms of disease, comorbidities, age group, demographic and lifestyle factors. And based on that, the doctor can look at what were the most effective pathways. The insurance provider or the coverage provider can advise the patient on what is likely to be financial outgo for the patient, and eventually, hopefully, it leads to a soon-to-be cured and happy patient, knowledgeable patient, bringing in transparency, a happier doctor, and eventually healthier citizens. Finally, I will talk about the third use case for government-sponsored population health management programs and how private sector can play a role, how we have played a role in the United States working with government agencies in running what we call as Diabetes Prevention and Control Alliance. Diabetes, as we all know, is an endemic. It's a problem across the world, and it's increasingly a problem in India based on the lifestyle and affluence that we're seeing now. In the US specifically, 26 million people, about 2.6 crore people are diabetics. About 8 crore people, 7.9 million, are pre-diabetics. That is 35% of adult population is pre-diabetic. That's a very high number. And the outcome or the challenges that these people face is that diabetics lose 10 to 15 years of life eventually, and the life that they have is also not as good in quality. We recognize this problem. We worked with our 20-year-long data sets. We identified symptoms that triggered eventually a person to develop diabetes over his lifetime. Several years, even decades before that person has developed any direct symptom to indicate diabetes. And then we work with the governments to identify and control this diabetic population, to help them with programs so that they never end up becoming diabetic. The medical cost implication is 1:5 saving for a person who does not end up becoming diabetic. How do we run it? We identify the pre-diabetic population. We work with our partners in the government Center for Disease Control and YMCA of America and local pharmacies to run this program where this person is incentivized to get on a wellness program and lose weight and get healthy. Eventually, we were recognized by several government agencies for this program, and we were given awards on healthy living and best US leader. So these are some of the options that can be possible as we talk about more effective delivery of healthcare to the citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That is, you have pointed certain key arrows where we could intervene with ICT in health. But health is such a huge thing. And of course, what you talked about is just that even India is the diabetes capital of the world, and we are doing the tracking of diabetes at least in 4 districts, Government of India program. But the issue again comes, big issue is how do you put that data and how do you track each patient, what you've done. So it's a good program that you're doing, we could learn from that certainly. But after we shall add briefly on other issues in health, so we'll take up the discussion then. Thank you, and request you to.
Good morning, everyone. So, lot of information, lot of applications, lot of things where the end citizen can benefit from. So, what I am going to talk about is a little different. How we can secure the applications we are making for citizens. So, I'll start with a picture. If anyone can recognize this picture, this is a picture of a place called Hackerville. This is a place in Romania where only hackers live. All ethical hackers. What are these guys doing? So these guys are doing nothing, they're hacking. So they're hacking for a cause, they're hacking for their nation, they're hacking for, whatever, for profits, for money. There are few examples of government sites being hacked in India. So anyone can guess, how many sites are hacked in a year in India, as far as the government sites are concerned. It's more than 300 per year. A recent example is BSNL. It's a couple of days back, BSNL site was hacked, and government is trying to investigate, some of the Chinese manufacturers, and they role in the hacking of the BSNL website. What we are hiding, or what these hackers are interested as far as the government agencies are concerned, these records, the PAN card records, their personal details, their bank transactions which they do, their financial habits. So these are the things which hackers are interested in. And it's not like, a hacker will come and steal the information from your PC or whatever, device a person is using. In our case, maybe a common workstation which is placed in CSC. So these information are persistent hack. It's hacked by profiling a user. Users are targeted, sites are targeted, institutes are targeted, and then the information is still in a very persistent and strategic way. So what we have to do is we have to know the unknown. These people are not known to us, right? And in many cases, the sites are hacked, the damage is done, then we come to know like there is something which has happened. And it's very difficult to track down these guys. So there are 3 types of major people, or say group of hackers which are there in the world. One, which are motivated for their national interest. People come and they try to vigil the countries which are can be threat to the country. Second, the group of people which are working for a common cause. Third, people which are working for their individual cause. Momentary gains. They may steal the money from government organizations or personal accounts. So these are the 3 types of people which are there, and they're trying to damage the complete IT infrastructure or enablement which we are trying to do. So cost of hacking can be huge. So it can be quantified in private sector. Like for a Sony, if you have heard of, the damage which was done was around 100 million of the record which was stored from their database. But repercussions were much more than that. They lose their reputation, the business was lost, which were into billions. But as far as the government is concerned, it can't be quantified. It's invaluable. We can't let our citizen information, go to other nations which can misuse them. So there is a statistics. There is a survey which has been done by consultancies, and which says that 70 to 75% of the hacking is done on the web-based applications. Where the people are going to a portal or trying to access applications which are remotely placed in a data center, they are being hacked or being targeted. So the security trends, if you see in the IT industries, are also changing. There used to be a few notorious guys who used to hack for fun or to prove something. Now these guys, slowly turning into profitability or targeting government institutes or commercial institutes, and even you and me. For whatever we do, whatever we are trying to do, because most of the people, in the urban areas specifically, they do all the transactions, banking transactions, financial transactions, bill payment, everything on the internet. Everyone is carrying a smartphone or a tablet or a laptop. They try to do because of the ease. And government is providing that facility. That's very good for citizens, right? They don't have to stand in the queue. Government also saves cost as far as the infrastructure is concerned. But we have to make sure that these sites are secure enough so that no one, no person can damage the system as well as the information of the citizens. If you see the threats also, there used to be only viruses which we know, the RPCs, virus infected, then we used to call some guys to install some antivirus and we used to clean our systems. Now threats have been changed. It's from virus, it's going to APT. APT is advanced persistent threat, where a person will come, he won't be physically present in your network, but he is in your network periphery. So what he'll do, he's a part of your network, he'll gather all the information slowly and then try to do whatever. So he can steal the information, he can manipulate the information, he can change the information, whatever billing information we have, incident bills, he can do anything. Even, as sir was saying, power grids, he can bring down the power grids itself. So we can, it's a small thing, IT infrastructure in the power company, if you say, it's just an enablement. But until we secure it, it can do a good amount of damage. And there have been instances in the world where, there is no bullet fired, but still there has been damages done. The third trend is, the targets, the devices, the penetration of the devices. So if you see, the people are moving from workstations to laptops to tablets now to the smartphones. Because they are easy to handle. And we can do anything using our tablets or smartphones. So these devices are more threat prone than the workstation which used to be placed at a single location. So security has to be started from foundation. That's what I was coming to. It has to be started from the place where the person is trying to log into the application also. So the device is using, that has to be secure. There has to be ways where we can secure, or we can tie that user by some type of evaluation criteria also. Second, the data center where the applications or the place where we are trying to access has to be innovatively secured, not the legacy way. Third, we need to use some type of techniques like received techniques. If you see a tank, there was an instance in World War II where German was trying to attack the British Army, and British Army was lacking in the shoulders, in their soldier and soldiers and other infrastructure strength. So what they did was they deceived the German army. So if you see, it was a rubber tank. So what they did, they made some rubber tanks that they were placed on the border, and German decided not to call off the war. There was not a single bullet which was fired, and English called off their war. So similarly, IT has to deceive the hackers rather than targeting only the IPs, which we used to do. There can be different people behind the IPs of different identities. So we need to be very innovative. We need to be proactively as far as the security is concerned, and we need to make a database or some type of innovative things where we can profile some users or so, and deceive or enable our data centers and securely deliver the services. So these are few instances, few applications or few databases which as a company Delivery is trying to do. we are making a database of hackers, which is based on not on their only the identity or IP addresses, based on 200 different type of criteria. And these are shared with the users. These are shared with the companies which are using these security devices, where we can tell them that if someone is trying to come to your system, it will go to the database, check, and suggest whether it's a valid user or a hacker. Other type of attacks are DDoS attacks, where what hackers do is they don't steal the application, but they block the packet which is going to the application also. So that distributed denial of service attacks are fast and slow. That also needs to be taken care of innovatively. And what I want to summarize is, the applications, hosted places or the remote places has to be secured from all the four directions using the legacy, security techniques as well as the new generation techniques, where the web applications as well as the hacker databases as well as the DOS preventions as well as the application firewalls need to be present in the network to securely and immediately deliver services which we are planning to do in a very good way. That's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Really did feel that, for the first time I've seen something, security and defense and tanks and all that, so it is really a security issue, one can see that. So thank you very much for that. And I think before we open to the house, I'll just make a few comments on health, because that was what you had just spoken about, and just what we are doing in Haryana in health sector and what we in Haryana, you see challenges in health sector of connecting with each individual for each disease and 24/7 is a huge, in health sector, a huge challenge. So one of the basic things is to, the key health indicators we talk about: maternal mortality rate, infant mortality rate, and so that means that every child, before his birth and after his birth, we have to track every child. We have to track every mother. For that purpose, we have a big management information system, which of course Government of India has made for all states. And each child, when pregnancy is being reported, every time she goes for an antenatal checkup, it is being reported. And even to that much that if the lady reports that she has anemia, it is reported, is to be treated. And once she lands up in a district hospital during pregnancy and she has, we find that she has high anemia, we have developed a software even for reverse tracking, and why in the first place, why the nurse in the first place did not detect the high blood pressure or the risk factors. So this is the level with which we are using the ICT. And another way we are using it is with the ASHA workers. ASHAs are the volunteers which connect with 1,000, population size of 1,000 in each household and each member for various kinds of programs, whether it's malaria or whether it's TB or whether it is the mother and the child health. So we are trying to, we get in touch through SMS-based solutions. We try to get in touch with her and prompt her that, okay, this is, and although also the nurses, that this is the time for immunization of the child, these are the children which need to be immunized, and in your next camp, they are the ones they have to be covered. So this is the extent of which the ICT is being used. And now we have, another thing we have done in the last 1 year is the entire drug procurement is through the ICT and through a software and automatic indenting inventory, so that I can sit in my table and know how many medicines are available in each of the CHCs and PHCs and hospital. And this is being monitored on online and a real-time basis. So that's a very big thing we have done in the last 1 year. And now we are going in for a hospital management information system that is not only, that is information system for the efficient running of the hospital, which is normal for anybody, but also we are trying to attempt on the disease profiling of each individual, whoever comes. Once they have come to our institution at any point of time, his record will be maintained and there will be interportability of the between the health institutions, so that next time he goes, the data is available to the doctor and then he can diagnose on that basis. And so this would be, I think, a huge task. And similarly, mobile health teams are going to all schools for the screening of all disease, disability, deficiencies of children, and then the further treatment that is to be done under the children's school health program. And similarly, we're doing a very interesting thing is triangulation of nobody knows how many infants die and how many mothers die. So there's only a sample-based thing all over India. So we have done, in fact, now through the software, a triangulation based, the data collection and then triangulation to come out with an authentic figure of how many mothers are actually dying or infants are for infant death audits and maternal death audits. So these are some of the things which we are doing, but as I was saying, disease profiling, tracking is the ideal dream which that we should be able to do it for each citizen. And Devendra was just sitting that why can't we do it, but it is something which is real time. The huge challenge in any system, whether it's power or anything, is first of all I think is a data collection, and it has to be dynamic. And most of the time it is that once we have a database, it just sits there and nobody updates unless it's real time and online. And for that, for example, in health, this is a real time. They have to, if she has gone to a camp, they immunize the children, she has to load it that very day, that so many children, what are the names and how many children she has immunized. But still, we are trying to do it for the last 1 year because we are not taking any manual reporting. One of the things is, don't take any manual reports. Just do all your reviews on the online data that is being generated. That's what we have done for the last 6 months. And we find that still, though we review it like that, and that's the only data we are collecting, yet there are gaps. Because numbers is a huge thing, huge task. And there are lakhs of children, lakhs of mothers, 5 lakh births every year. So it's very difficult to get everything on data, online and real time in a proper fashion to buy. Second thing is, what we realize is, once you have a data, we don't know how to analyze it and use it. That is it. And third, of course, the hardware connectivity you have mentioned, and I would not like to go there. And as well as the integration of, CSCs, we have already discussed this issue. I'll not go into that. And of course, viability, but only one suggestion, I think your example of integrating it with the banks and using, let CSCs be used even for private business could be one good idea, which I thought it could be easily done to the banks or even mobile network and mobile telephones. So before I close on this, I would say if any questions are there, we will invite questions from the house, and you're most welcome.
I have one question each from Devendra as well as Navraj. Thanks for excellent presentation, Devendra, because this conference is focused on the CSCs, their viability, challenges and the roadmap. One of the biggest challenges which you highlighted is for the connectivity, which Rajesh Agrawal had raised. NOFN will take its own time. But another challenge is availability of power to the rural CSCs. What is your approach to address that challenge for the CSC to be able to operate? Second question to Navraj, that if we want to use CSCs as effective vehicles as a supplemental role for the health services, to what extent you are prepared to trust the citizen and the VLE operator in giving them the necessary authority to operate, rather than confining those and authorizations only to your regular staff? These are two questions.
Sir, regarding power supply, as you are aware that at the moment our PRM, the regulatory measures, we give power basically in the peak hour, that is the evening morning, and during the day only 2 hours. So I know, just a minute, this is the problem which is also faced in the supply of power supply to the schools also during the day. The problem is that either one uses the inverters or you use the solar solution, because until in some of the villages where, for example, we have promised 24 hours, it is linked to essentially loss reduction. You know that if somebody is willing to adopt our scheme where the meters are taken out, we are prepared to do 24 hours. In 80 villages we have done it. Now because of the elections, it has been slowed down because of various protests, etc. But this is one scheme which we intend to pursue very vigorously. Because that is the only way we can tackle the problem of loss, huge losses in rural areas. If that happens, then 24-hour supply is not a problem at all. So if 24-hour supply at the moment, honestly, I cannot give.
Devendra, point is well taken. The limited point was, given all the constraints, all the regulations, all the problems, is there a way to enable a CSC to operate his system on the grid supply? There are constraints, well taken. But would there be an approach to address that? That's what I'm saying.
One is, as I mentioned, that it could be charging during peak time inverters. Second is the solar solution. And solar, for example, in the renewable energy, we have Principal Secretary Renewable Energy also sitting here, by the way. I think, sir, for a small power requirement like CSC, I think MNRE provides 30% capital subsidy.
We have discussed that the initial capital investment comes to close to about 2 lakhs of rupees, and it does not meet my requirement in order to enable him to operate a multifunctional printer, scanner and that kind of device. One can operate 2 PCs on whatever solar power we get. I've been in discussion with Siddhi, but in any case, we'll find an
alternative. Sir, what I'm saying is the heavy duty work, let's say printing and others which requires power supply, between 12 to 2 or 12 to 3 when I am giving power supply in the villages also during the day, probably that can be done at that time. Otherwise, for computer to operate,
it's very hard on the part of somebody who is doing business to tell his client and the citizen कि मेरे पास तुम 10 बजे 11 बजे मत आना कि बिजली आएगी तब आना।
सर्टिफिकेट उस वक्त कलेक्ट कर लेगा। नहीं आए कभी भी, कंप्यूटर चलता रहेगा at a smaller power supply, he can get his certificate, printing कुछ और चीजें doing that.
Edwin, about your this question, that it is not. Of course, we do trust wherever they can be. They can perform a role. For example, I think we have been in discussion for registration of births and deaths, and that, of course, as for legal provisions, and then we have agreed to sort of. They can give the certificates. That's not. In fact, tomorrow it can be online also. Certificates can be given. It's not a problem. But of course, where health question of other services are concerned, because there are technical services for BP lena ya disease profiling, and that of course cannot be done.
Both are expert services. My limited point is CSC as an interface point is allowed to be used by the citizens also for updating certain data. If the citizen comes and submits a data, can we reduce the rigor of authorization of the data before we make it a part of it?
Certainly, if they can be in loop, we have no problem on that. If they can be in loop.
Thanks.
Any other question?
The presentation was very good and it was very informative. In fact, most of the things that you said was a news for me. What I would like to ask you, most of the initiative which you told us today that you are taking, they are basically aimed at improving your own operational efficiency, your own financial flux of the loopholes, leakages. Are you planning to take some initiatives which improves the satisfaction of the consumer also? For instance, to give you certain examples, though I am not very up to date with these things now. In our times, the biggest problem used to be to replace the damaged transformer. There was no mechanism by which power department people by themselves used to come to know that the transformer has been damaged. Somebody will come from the village to tell him that transformer has been damaged. After that, the poor XCN, he will start hunting for the same kind of transformer, whether it is available in Panipat or it is available in Yamunanagar, and then try to transport it from there. So some of these inventory management, because your conductors, after all, they are capable of transmitting any information, not only power. So are you planning something in this direction also, where possibly online you are able to know as to where some kind of a major breakdown has taken place or some kind of a minor breakdown has taken place, and those people can respond directly without even. So this is primarily my question is that are you planning something to use this e-facility etc. to improve the satisfaction?
To know online directly at our level without anybody complaining, that is something which will require a very sophisticated system. For example, in Panipada saying smart grid handling, there will be outage management system where there will be modems. For example, there has to be a fault detection system which will immediately through a modem or a communication system convey to my substation that there is a fault, and then I'll respond. That is happening as a pilot. We are doing it. That requires huge investment. But as CSC, I wanted to use, for example, this. If effectively this computer service center is there in a village, let us say. Through that, we have an internet grievance redressal mechanism. In urban areas, people can open their internet, they can register their complaint. But now we have opened also an SMS gateway. I think before you came, I mentioned recently mostly people in the rural areas also have mobiles. Most of the 90% people have mobile. So through an SMS, they simply type in such and such village transformer is damaged. And I have a mechanism by which immediately recording it, and within, let us say, a prescribed time period, the person has to be responded by us, and a confirmation will be given that your the replacement will take place in such and such time. So that system we have recently introduced by using a SMS gateway.
Just for your information, have you ever tried to collect this information as to what is the average time of replacement of damaged truck?
नहीं, of course, ये तो हमारे अभी हमने जैसे हरियाणा रेगुलेटरी कमीशन प्रिस्क्राइब सर्टेन standards of performance. Unfortunately, अभी तक those standards of performance were never prescribed. अब we have started monitoring कि भाई actually जब ट्रांसफार्मर की कंप्लेंट आई, and this can happen only if there is authentic recording कि ये पहले कंप्लेंट कब आई. Otherwise क्या करेगा वो SDO? वो जब रिप्लेस किया उससे 6 घंटे पहले दिखाएगा कि यहाँ कंप्लेंट आई थी. But if it is actually recorded in the SMS or through some electronic system, then you can very well monitor it. And this is what we will do now.
I have a question. This is from Ms. Basu. Have you done any impact analysis of after the implementation of your CSCs in terms of what changes or what impact the CSCs have had in terms of service delivery?
Officially, we have not done any impact analysis, but it is true that the citizens are quite aware, and there will be more and more demand for LMKs. Typically, the LMKs are at the tehsil headquarters or a panchayat. So we are getting more and more demands that there should be, in remote tehsils and remote locations, there should be more LMKs or CSCs set up. So I think that goes to show that the demand is increasing, and we have to, cater to those places which are even left out. If you had noticed in my presentation, it was in clusters that the growth has happened, and in districts like Kinnaur and Lahaul Spiti also, it is just clustered around the. Those are basically the SDM, the state subdivision levels, not really absolutely the panchayats. So, but there are demands for that.
If I may just interrupt and add another brief question. How have you addressed uncovered areas? Because yours is a ground-up model.
Uncovered areas, we have, anyway the existing field level staff is there. The CSCs are, wherever the CSCs are not there, obviously, the citizen is not getting them at their doorstep, and that is why we say that the demand is there, and we still need to have that target of 3,366, which we have not met yet. We are there, only 2,393 are the active VLEs. So we are yet to cover those areas. And one, I would just like to respond, sir, to what you said about that authentication thing, which was addressed to ma'am. That I think would be the next phase, because we are just now in the setup of these CSCs, and it is quite a challenge to just get them to set it up as a business model and to run it for some period of time. And the revenue support that we are getting from the government of India, that is only for 4 years, that is 48 months. That is kind of like a hand-holding. And then only, as I mentioned, that it will not only be G2C it is not only G2C services, but also business to services like mobile recharge and other things which I showed you. Also, we have allowed them to put these FMCG products and things like that so that it is viable, so that the entire thing becomes like a one-stop shop for the person. So once we have established the viability, sir, then only that authentication can come. As of today, we are not really thinking about the authentication. That will be at a later stage.
No, I think
No.
My question to her was different, not on that authentication. I am saying it is the ease of delivery of service and reduction of the processes in order to deliver it.
So that's true, sir, but that we have developed those SOPs.
Anyway, we'll address that when we present our case.
Sir. Is that okay? What about the
सर मेरा क्वेश्चन आपसे भी है because I was discussing with her. I am very keen about the faster rollout of the CSC, as you know, because of the successful experiment in Barwala. And I want an alternative to my meter billing collection system, etc. I have no competition at the moment, and I want, if nothing else, it will act as a competition for the people who are already doing this job. She is saying that आपकी जो मैंने notification देखा है, if I understand it correct, उसमें you delegated this responsibility of selection of the computer service center operator to the deputy commissioners as part of the e-Disha project जो उसने पहले से district में projects कर रहे हैं. Apparently they are doing it in Himachal, where they outsource this activity to 2 agencies और उससे उन्होंने bid मंगवाया है. They select these CSCs और उसमें उनका एक revenue model है जहाँ पे discounts वगैरह commissions के through and उसमें positive या negative जो है concession के लिए there is a bidding. The bidding parameter is the person to whom you outsource, whether he gives you money or whether he takes you money, and apparently that money is being provided by government as a revenue support for 48 months. So इसका faster rollout के लिए if deputy commissioners are being authorized, my simple request is that typically जैसे होता है implementation में, even for the purpose of selection, if there is standard template for inviting the application and a standard template for evaluation and for award of the CSC contracts, etc. Or to select the CSC, if that can be done, I think that can expedite the CSC rollout.
Okay, I'll come over there to this one.
See, this issue has already been discussed and debated. Dr. Tyagi yesterday said the pluses and minuses of or one side or the other side of involving an SCA in this. The structure that we have taken in our scheme, and this is an administrative structure where there is an ESDA at the state level. Entire technology support integration is provided, it is the responsibility of the ESDA. The selection of VLEs, giving them support, training is given to the district level DEGS, which will also be incrementally staffed with professionals. Because I would like the deputy commissioners to take the ownership of his VLE for regular monitoring as well. In terms of the GUI support grant, it is 3,000 rupees per month per CSC, and that is also one of the lessons in our first failure. Having been the pioneers in the country to set up 1159 CSCs, when we got almost negative quotes, Government of India says 3,000 per CSC as a sustainable support during the initial period. When you invite SCAs to quote, somebody said -20. As a matter of fact, out of 2 of our SCAs, one is on a negative grant, the other is on a positive grant. You cannot. As a matter of fact, I look upon power sector as the biggest volume service provider to the CSC in terms of electricity meter reading, bill generation, bill distribution and collection, because it is not only volumes but it is of a repetitive nature at the local end itself. This will be the biggest support. Even in Barwala, you have been stepping in to resolve, but initial 2 months we had a huge challenge coming from your representative of the ex-servicemen league. So when you are authorizing the CSC operation,
vested interest का वो लक्ष्य तो होगा ही होगा.
Precisely. So what I am saying is there will have to be an order from the owner organization, that is you, to say that this jurisdiction is now for the purposes of meter reading, billing, bill printing, bill distribution is assigned to the CSC. Once that mandate officially comes from you, obviously he will be responsible. And when he knows that his financial viability is coming more than 50% from your business, we expect that he would be doing a reasonably good job out of it. Financial viability of a CSC holds the key to its operations. Therefore, our model talks about G2C services, which is always a evolutionary basket. Today it may be 10, tomorrow it will be 20, day after it may cross 100, it may cross 150. B2C is a whole package which enables him to earn revenues. As a matter of fact, we have tied up with it the third part also, that HKCL, it can also act as an authorized learning center of Haryana Knowledge Corporation by providing mass IT literacy. So he gets his revenues from this stream also. So it's a convergence model in order to ensure sustainability.
No, as a matter of fact, we get lessons even from this conference. And I was just discussing, I'll be talking to you as well as Devinder and other sectors, that time has come when we should organize every month one conference on specific sector. Say for example, health. A 2-day conference on use of ICT in the health sector, where different governments who have implemented solutions as well as the ICT industry with their solutions, you focus only on health. Similarly, only on power. So that a lot of learning and solutions will come in.
I think that's an excellent idea and we must do it. And thank you very much. I think the session comes to an end here. Thank you.
It was truly an electrifying session, isn't it, gentlemen? The exchange of information, the discussions, almost seems like a rapid fire out here. To present the token of appreciation to all the esteemed panelists, I would now request Shri Ravi Gupta ji, CEO Elite Technomedia, to come up, please. Starting with Srimati Navraj Sindhu ji. Can we have a huge round of applause? Haryana is known for their strength in the arms. Please use it. Shri Devinder Singh ji.
Mismatch. Time.
I'm sorry. I regret for the mismatch. Now Shri Devinder Singh ji, Principal Secretary.
थोड़ा साइड पे थोड़ा साइड
Ms. Priyanka Basu ji, Director Government Command. Shri Sandeep Khurana ji, Vice President United Health Group. Shri Puneet Ahuja ji, Senior Consultant, Juniper Networks. Thank you so much, everyone. Can we have a group photograph now? I request everyone to please bear with us for this.